Imagine being stranded for 72 long days after a plane crash in a place completely covered in snow and ice. There's no one around, no help, and absolutely nothing to eat. Oh, you can only see the shadow of death closing in. Oh, but then, something happens that you never expected. The story begins on October 13, 1972, when a rugby team was flying to America to play their final match. It was a normal flight, and all the players inside the plane were very happy because for many of them, it was their first time flying, and all of them were traveling outside their country for the first time. Some players were also accompanied by family members who were going along to support their children in the game. The plane took off and proceeded towards Chile, flying over the Andes Mountains. Everything was normal up to that point. All the players inside were very cheerful, looking at the snow-covered mountains from the window seats. But they didn't know that in a few minutes, something terrifying was about to happen to them. After a while, the weather suddenly turned bad. A very severe snowstorm hit, causing the plane to start shaking violently. The turbulence scared all the passengers. But one passenger inside said that when a plane flies over mountains, turbulence is normal, so there was no danger. He assured them everything would soon be normal. But as the plane flew further, the turbulence increased. The aircraft began to shake even more forcefully. All the items inside the plane started falling everywhere. Seeing this, panic arose among the people. The pilots tried to control the plane, but it had already gone out of control. Before the pilots could do anything, a mountain appeared in front, and the plane crashed into the mountain, splitting into two halves. One player was instantly swept away with the rear section of the plane and disappeared into the air as the crash occurred. Meanwhile, the front part of the plane skidded rapidly and struck a large sheet of ice. The impact was so severe that all the seats inside the plane were crushed together, instantly killing many people. The people who survived the accident gathered themselves and began helping the remaining people in the cabin. Some players quickly reached the pilots and tried to pull them out, but both pilots had also died in the collision. It was a very painful scene. Blood was spilled everywhere, and bodies were scattered all around. A total of 45 people were traveling on this plane, but after the crash, 18 lives were lost, and only 27 people remained alive. Since the plane had taken off in the evening, night soon fell. The outside temperature began to drop rapidly. The cold was unbearable. To protect themselves from the cold, they used the luggage and the bodies of the deceased to block all the holes in the plane so the cold air could not enter. They all huddled together to keep warm. They were all in a terrible condition. They were still in deep shock and realized that they might not survive this. However, they somehow managed to get through the night. When the sun rose in the morning, they saw that 4 or 5 more people had died from the cold. But the good news was that the storm had stopped. The outside weather had become normal. When these people came out of the plane, they could only see white snow everywhere, as far as the eye could see. Now, these people had to get out of this place quickly because they couldn't survive here for long. There were no houses, no animals, and no vegetation nearby that they could use to survive. First, they pulled the plane seats out to make sleeping space inside the plane. Then, they laid the injured people in the sun so their bodies could warm up. They began to collect water by melting the snow, drop by drop, for drinking. They also gathered everyone's belongings. If they found anything useful, they put it in a separate suitcase. The bodies of the people who died in the accident were carried away from the plane by some survivors and covered with snow to prevent them from decomposing so they could be taken back when help arrived. Once things were somewhat organized, they breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone was extremely hungry. The remaining food was divided among everyone, one small piece each. Although this one piece of food was very little, it was enough for survival. However, everyone knew that this food would have to last until help reached them. Everyone thought that the government must have known by now that their plane had crashed and they would be rescued soon. So, they all sat together and waited for help. In fact, the spot where their plane crashed was a valley surrounded by high mountains, which made it very difficult to get out. While they were talking, a plane flew overhead. Seeing the plane, they all shouted loudly to make their presence known. But it was useless because the plane was flying very high, and it couldn't see the people trapped below. The plane disappeared from sight. A few hours later, night fell. They all put on extra clothes and took shelter inside the plane, using the luggage inside to cover all the openings. That night passed as well, and the next morning, a man named Nando woke up. He had been unconscious since the plane crash. Nando was in such bad shape that he couldn't stand on his feet. But despite this, he went to his sister and hugged her. When Nando asked about his parents, he was told that they had passed away. Hearing this, he was very heartbroken. Meanwhile, the other survivors melted the snow again to collect a little water and spent the day drinking it. They also drew an X mark on the ground so that passing planes could see them. After some time, another plane flew over them. Seeing it, the people were very happy and tried to attract its attention by flashing a mirror. But this plane also passed them by. The people were still happy because they thought maybe the plane had seen them and help would soon reach them. But another night passed like this, and no one came to save them. They now realized that no one was coming to rescue them here. So, they began to think about how they could save their lives in this trapped area. Then, it occurred to them that some batteries were left in the back section of the plane. If they could retrieve those batteries, they could use them to power the plane's radio and contact the outside world. Everyone liked this idea, but completing this task was not as easy as they thought, because the back section of the plane had broken off during the crash. Who knew where that part was now? Nevertheless, they decided to look for the back part of the plane. After this, they made some goggles using leather and glass to protect their eyes from the intense snow glare. 4 men from the group set off to retrieve the batteries. But after walking a short distance, when they looked back, their plane was nowhere to be seen. They now realized that no one could spot their plane in all this snow, and perhaps that's why no one had come to rescue them yet. As these people tried to move forward, the snow began to shift. Seeing this, the men got scared and returned to their plane. 6 days had passed since these people were trapped here, and a week later, all the food on the plane ran out. Now, this area was covered in snow, and there were no animals or vegetation nearby. Therefore, they had to do something to fill their stomachs. Finding nothing to eat, they started eating the moss frozen on the rocks, which tasted terrible, but they were forced to eat it. Here, Nando said that even if he had to eat the bodies of the dead, he would do it to keep himself alive. Hearing this, everyone was left wondering. A debate soon started among them about whether they should eat the dead or die of starvation. Some people argued that doing so was wrong and that God would not forgive them. After this, they spent the day bearing the hunger. Time passed like this, and with time, their hunger also increased. The situation was such that they were all forced to eat their shoelaces and even cigarettes. But after several days of not eating, how could those things satisfy their hunger? A few more days passed like this, and Nando's sick sister died due to hunger. Nando had lost his parents as well as his sister. Time went on like this, and these people somehow kept themselves alive for 9 days. But by now, their hunger had increased so much that their brains had stopped functioning, and death was just a step away from them. Now, they had no other choice. Because of this, they decided to eat the corpses. First, 4 men went outside the plane and started cutting and eating the bodies. Seeing them eat, some other people also changed their minds and went to them to fill their stomachs. But 5 men were such that they were ready to accept their own death, but did not think it right to eat another human. From the next day, these people started cutting the bodies farther away from the plane so that those 5 men would not feel distressed. Here, a boy named Numa found a suitcase buried under the snow. Upon opening the suitcase, they found a radio inside. After turning on the radio, they found there was no signal. For this, these people fixed things together and made an antenna. On this radio, they heard a news report saying that the government had launched many rescue operations to find them, and about 66 planes were sent out in their search. But despite all these efforts, when these people could not be found, the government had declared them dead. Therefore, the government had stopped searching for these people. Hearing this news, the courage of all the people in the group broke, and all their hope of survival was shattered. Now, among the 5 surviving people who refused to eat the dead, 4 of them also ate the human flesh. Because they realized that no one was coming to help them here and now, they had to do something themselves to get out of here. Here, 3 people from the group decided to go and find the back section of the plane again to bring back the batteries so they could use them to establish contact with the outside world and inform them that they were still alive. After this, 3 people set out to search for the back section of the plane. And after walking for a few hours, they found some pieces of the plane which they picked up. And they also found the body of the player who had been separated from them during the crash. They buried his body and continued their journey because they now suspected that the back part of the plane would be nearby. After a few hours of climbing, they were all very tired, and the icy winds made it difficult for them to breathe. Soon, night fell, and these people decided to spend the night hiding behind a rock. The next morning, when they woke up, they were all covered in snow, and the condition of these 3 was very bad. The cold was so intense that one of them even had his eyes frozen, and the other 2 were not in a state to stand on their feet. Now, they had absolutely no strength to move forward. Because of this, they all sat on the iron shield from the outside of the plane and slid down the mountain. Seeing these people return empty-handed, gloom spread throughout the group, and that last remaining survivor also ate human flesh and fell asleep cursing his fate. Days passed like this, and these people somehow kept themselves alive for 17 days. But here was the bad news. For the past 5 days, the weather outside had been quite bad. Everyone was sitting inside the plane to escape the storm, when suddenly a big storm hit and filled the plane with snow inside. Many people inside were buried under the snow. The people who were on top were very scared by this accident. But then they showed courage, dug the snow, and pulled the people buried inside out. Now everyone came out on time. But one girl was buried very deep in the snow. She suffocated and died in the snow. These people were very scared, and they had not properly recovered from this accident when they heard strange sounds from outside. When these people looked outside, they found that another severe storm was coming towards them, which was more intense than the previous one. Another storm hit, and they were all buried under the snow again. This storm was so intense that the whole plane was filled with snow. Some people died on the spot. The people trapped inside had no way to get out now. Among them, one companion quickly made a hole in the roof of the plane so they could get oxygen and avoid suffocating. These people folded their hands and just prayed that no more snow would fall on them, or they would all be buried here forever. After a few hours, they managed to compose themselves and gathered a total of 8 bodies, keeping them in a corner. Now, 18 days had passed since they were trapped here, and their condition was bad due to hunger. Now, there was only one way to survive. They would eat the meat of the bodies inside. But doing so was very difficult for all of them, because all these bodies belonged to their own people. Now, seeing all this, the boy named Numa lost control of himself. He got angry and started breaking the plane's window. At this time, a piece of glass went into his foot. But even after this, he did not stop and kept digging a hole in the snow. After 2 full days of hard work, they were all able to make a hole towards the top. After this, they all came outside. Coming outside, they were all so happy as if they had all been freed from the prison of death. They celebrated the joy of survival and then started digging the snow to pull the plane out. At this time, Numa noticed that the injury on his foot no longer hurt because the ice had numbed his wound. Although he did not pay much attention to this and continued to dig the snow. Now, the sun was shining in the sky, so they did not have much difficulty digging the snow. And within a few hours, the plane was out. Now the sun was quite warm, so they all started thinking about finding the back part of the plane. But they had no idea how they would cope with these icy nights. So they decided to wait a little longer because the summer season was approaching, and the climb would be a little easier then. 34 days passed like this, and now the weather was a little better than before. Now, the people who had gone to search for the plane the first time were still unwell, and they were in no state to climb again. A few hours later, they found out that another companion had died due to hunger. Seeing this, these people became very discouraged and buried him in the snow. 2 more days passed like this, and on the 36th day, they decided that if they wanted to save their lives, they had to bring the batteries from the back of the plane and inform the outside world. Otherwise, one by one, they would all die. After this, 4 people from the group decided to climb up. And the names of those 4 people were Roberto, Tintin, Numa, and Nando. These people wore many layers of clothes to protect themselves from the cold and set out to search for the plane. But even after walking for a few hours, their plane was nowhere to be seen. Just then, Numa's health began to deteriorate, and he fell unconscious. Here, the other people saw that infection had spread in his leg wound. Because of this, they all decided to go back and take Numa down. But Numa refused to do so. He decided to go down alone and ask the others to move forward. Now Numa returned to the plane, but his condition was so bad that he fell unconscious as soon as he reached there. After a while, when he regained consciousness, he saw that his companions were trying to clear the snow from the plane. He also wanted to help them, but due to weakness, he could not even move. On the other hand, the 3 companions, after traveling for several hours, reached the place where the back part of the plane was, which had broken off after hitting the rock. Seeing this, these 3 became very happy and went near the back of the plane. When these 3 started investigating the plane, they found many other things besides batteries, such as many clothes, a bottle of rum, and many packets of cigarettes. These people returned to their plane with the things. There, they connected the battery to the plane's radio and tried to contact the outside world. But unfortunately, the radio was broken, and thus their last hope was also shattered. Meanwhile, Numa's health was also deteriorating, and now his infection had spread throughout his body. The food found from the plane had also run out now, so they all started eating human flesh again. Numa stopped eating so that more food would be left for the others because he knew that his life would not be saved now. Some people from the group went to the back section of the plane once more in the hope that they might find something useful. This time, luck favored them, and they found a waterproof cloth which they joined together to make a sleeping bag. After this, they heard the news on the radio that after 58 days of the plane crash, government would now launch a final mission to find them. Hearing this news, life came back into everyone, and they got a small hope of survival. Here, some people said that they should stop here and wait for them, while the rest of the people said that if they stay here, no one will be able to see them. So, some of them should walk and call for help. At night, Numa's health deteriorated very badly. He was taking his last breaths. Before dying, he told everyone that when he died, they should all take him as their food. Saying these words, Numa died. Everyone gained courage from Numa's last words, and they received a letter from Numa. In that letter, Numa had written that he was very happy that he died among his friends, because he could not have gotten a better death than this. Now, reading Numa's letter, a different zeal came inside everyone, and 3 people from the group set out again in search of help. These 3 started their journey with a sleeping bag and a lot of food. This time, these 3 were determined that they would cross these mountains at any cost and reach Chile to call for help for everyone. These 3 continued to climb without stopping, and when night fell, they slept inside the sleeping bag. The next morning, they started their climb again and reached the summit of the mountain. But seeing the view from above, their courage seemed to break. There were only mountains and mountains in front of them, and this meant that they still had a very long distance to cover. It occurred to them that they should all go back because they did not have enough food for 3 people to complete this journey. Here, Tintin gave his food to the other two and went back so that these two could complete this journey easily, although this journey was very long and full of challenges. But still, these two did not give up and kept moving forward, and finally, after walking continuously for 10 days, the hard work of these two paid off. They reached an area where there was very little snow compared to the top. These two also found a clear water river, where they stopped and drank a lot of water. Then something happened that no one expected. They saw a man on horseback standing on the other side of the river. At first, these two could not believe their eyes when they saw that man. They thought they were dreaming. But soon they realized that this was not an illusion, but a real person. Seeing that man, their happiness knew no bounds. They shouted loudly and asked the man for help, but the man could not understand their words because he was far away from them and could not hear anything because of the sound of the flowing water. So he threw a piece of paper and a pencil across the river so that these two could write something to inform him. And these two wrote down their entire story on that paper. After reading all the stories written on the paper, this man reached the government official with the paper, where the official also came to know that among the people who were thought to have died in the plane crash 2 months ago, some people were still alive, and as soon as the news was received, the government launched a mission to save all these people. This man brought Roberto and Nando to his house, where they ate to their heart's content. Now this news spread like wildfire throughout the city, and soon there was a fair of journalists. And the people trapped in the snow mountains also heard this news on the radio, which made everyone jump with joy. After this, they washed their hands and face and packed their belongings. Soon, the rescue team reached the location with Roberto and Nando. And after 72 days of the plane crash, those people were finally rescued. After this, all these people were brought to the city, where they met their family members, and all the people of the city welcomed them like heroes. Now all these people were admitted to the hospital. Here, they all helped each other bathe, and then these people were given separate beds. But even that night, they all slept with each other because they were all in very deep mental shock after this accident. At the end of the story, we came to know that a total of 45 people were traveling on this plane, out of which the lives of only 16 people could be saved. Along with this, the movie made on this true story is called Alive. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If this video inspired you, drop a comment and let me know your favorite part. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. See you soon.